Let's continue with second lecture on Class 10 History, Chapter 1, Rise of Nationalism in Europe. In the previous video, we have studied the rise of nationalism in France and the French Revolution. In this video, we shall look at the making of nationalism in the whole of Europe. So let's start. Till the mid-18th century, Europe was very different from today. There was no idea of nation-states in Europe. Germany, Italy, Switzerland and other countries were divided into kingdoms, duchies and cantons in the mid-18th century. Their rulers had their autonomous territories. So there was a monarchy system followed in Europe. People didn't share any collective identity. They spoke different languages, belonged to different ethnic groups, etc. The only tie binding the people of these diverse groups was the common allegiance to the emperor. Now, if the people were so different from each other, then how did nationalism and the idea of nation-states emerge in Europe? Let's understand this by understanding the structure of European society in the mid-18th century. So, European society was divided into two major groups, the aristocracy and the peasantry. The aristocracy was the dominant high class. It was in minority, so it had less population. It owned estates and townhouses, so they were the landlords. The people of aristocracy spoke French, and speaking French represents high class. The families of aristocrats were connected through marriages, while the peasantry was opposite to aristocracy. It was the low class, it was in majority, and the peasants were tenants or small owners, so they were mostly landless people. And they looked after the land of aristocrats, so they worked under the aristocrats. Now, in the wake of industrialization, in late 18th and 19th centuries, new social groups came into being. These were the working class and the middle class. Now, this new middle class consisted of educated people like professionals, teachers, industrialists, businessmen, etc. And as they were educated, they demanded liberal nationalism. Now, let's see what is this liberal nationalism. The word liberal is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free. Now, what did liberal nationalism stand for? So, it stood for the freedom of individual, equality before law, government by consent. This means that there should be universal adult suffrage, freedom of markets, and abolition of state-imposed restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. So, what is this freedom of markets? At that time, the problem was that each of the state possessed its own currency, weights and measures. So in 1834, a customs union, Zollverein, was formed. It abolished the barriers on trade or tax, and it also reduced the number of currencies from 30 to 2. So earlier, a lot of tax had to be paid if goods had to be transferred from one country to other. Now this tax was abolished, and also earlier there were 30 currencies in Europe, but now the currencies were reduced to just 2. So all these changes were demanded by the middle class people, and in this way the feeling of nationalism had begun in Europe. Now let's return to a story about the French Revolution. So in the first lecture we had discussed about France, French Revolution and Napoleon. Now, after the defeat of Napoleon, European governments were driven by a spirit of conservatism. So, conservatives wanted to preserve national traditional institutions and society like the monarchy, church, social hierarchies, etc. In 1815, the representatives from Britain, Russia, Prussia and Austria met at Vienna to draw up a settlement for Europe. So this was known as the Treaty of Vienna or the Vienna Congress. We have already studied about the Vienna Congress, and it wanted to undo all the changes of the Napoleonic Code, set up a series of states on the boundaries of France to prevent expansion of France. Its main intention was to restore monarchy. So all the conservative states which were formed after the Treaty of Vienna were autocratic and sought to curb the freedom of people. So here we are seeing the two sides of a coin. On one hand, the revolutionaries want nationalism, while on the other hand, the conservatives want monarchy rule. So let's see what happened next. So when the conservative regimes were being formed, the revolutionaries started opposing the monarchical form of government, fighting for liberty or freedom, struggling for creation of nation states, and all this work was done underground as they had the fear of getting caught. Hence, many secret societies were formed by these revolutionaries. Now let's look at one such revolutionary. So Giuseppe Mazzini was an Italian revolutionary born in Genoa in 1807. He was a member of the secret society of Carbonari. He formed two more secret societies, the Young Italy in Marseilles and the Young Europe in Bern. He believed in the unification of Italy. So this was all for today. In the next lecture, we shall discuss more about nationalism in Europe. Thank you.